Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? It's another Pop, Lock, and Mock It episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle coming to you with some juicy information. If you have the 1.01 in your league, I'm going to tell you how you can win it in this episode. So make sure that you check out the entire video to see if you're drafting from the first overall position, how do you go out and draft to win your league? We're going to talk about it right now. But before we jump in to all the mock draft information, I have two things that I have to go over, okay? One's a giveaway. But first, let's talk about the fact that our listener leagues are now open, partnering with our friends over at Fantrax again this season. If you want to get in our listener leagues where we could have upwards of 1,000 people, you are going to want to do this. First off, go over to fantrax.com/headliners. Okay? You got to do those things first. Fill out all of your information, create a free account. In the promo code section, put Headliners in all capital letters just to make sure it goes through. Then you're going to have your Fantrax account all set up. Then, down in the pinned comment below, there is a link to join our leagues. Now, there is, like I said, there's going to be upwards of 1,000 people. So there's going to be multiple 12-team leagues that you're going to be competing against other people. And then at the end of the year, the top position of each league will go on to the playoffs to play each other. So it's absolutely awesome. It's going to be a full player pool for each league. And then at the end of the year in the playoffs, you might be facing somebody that actually has, maybe you have Dalvin Cook, they could have Dalvin Cook as well. So it's going to be really fun. This is really cool and a great opportunity to flex your strength and see if you have what it takes to take down Headliner Nation. But number 2, ladies and gentlemen, in Jake's safest running backs in fantasy football video, we said we were going to give away a Dalvin Cook jersey, and that's what we did. So we just got to tell everyone real quick, congratulations to Kalafa Kingston on winning the autographed Dalvin Cook jersey. This thing is an absolute beauty. Display that thing proudly. Congratulations to him on hammering home that Cook jersey. But enough of all that. We've got to get into the video now. We're going to be talking about how you dominate your draft and win your league if you're coming out of the 1.01. So hit the like button for me. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what your draft spot is. And then let's go ahead and jump into all of that action. All right, so we're going to actually be hopping into this thing towards the end of the first round. And as you can see, my first pick, drafting from the 101, is going to be Jonathan Taylor. There's going to be some people out there that want to go Christian McCaffrey instead. That's starting to become a thing. I'm not going to argue it with you. If that's what you're feeling, you got to go with your gut. But for me, Jay Taylor is still going to be the 101. Now, I do want to talk about the end of the first round here a little bit. So we get all the way to Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon at the 1.8, I'm fine with. But when you get to the 1.9, 1.10, if Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are still there, you've got to hammer the draft pick on Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. There's really no reason not to. Now, on this channel, we preach all the time, you can't pay attention to ADP and go solely off that. However, you can use it as a tool to kind of know when guys are going. And right now, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, and Leonard Fournette are all solidly in the second round. There is a really good chance that you are going to be able to get those guys in the second. So if you get to that 9, 10, 11 draft pick area and you have Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase sitting there, you have got to hammer the pick of Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and then take the best running back that comes back around to you. So the Chubb pick ends up working out for the most part because he gets Chubb, who probably wouldn't have been there at 2.4. He would have had to have picked from somebody else. But then he does end up getting Devontae Adams at the 2.4. So that doesn't end up working out too bad. Most dope ends up missing out on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and settles for Aaron Jones and DeAndre Swift. I would have taken both of those guys over Aaron Jones without a doubt, and more than likely Aaron Jones would have still been there at the 2-3. Same thing for Leonard Fournette, And the man himself, him and I actually spoke for a little bit afterwards and sent some messages back and forth. And at that time, I had explained to him, I was like, hey, man, there's a 95% chance that Leonard Fournette is going to be available at the 2-2. So take Justin Jefferson, take Jamar Chase. Now, it doesn't end up working out too bad either for him because he does get Stephon Diggs, but you do lose some of that upside there that Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase could have offered you, and then you probably still get Leonard Fournette at the 2-2 if he's really your guy. So make sure that you just keep an eye on those ADPs because all three of those guys are going in the second round, especially Jones and Fournette. You could have definitely waited on those guys and got yourself some upside with Jefferson and Chase. So just keep an eye on that. Make sure that you are utilizing that. Don't use it as your Bible, okay? Don't live off of it, but definitely keep an eye on it. Travis Kelce is the first tight end off the board. He goes mid-second round. I was hoping Mike Evans was going to make it to me, but Mama Rich, thanks a lot, Optio. He ends up taking him at the 2-7, which I'm not surprised. Obviously, I've talked up Mike Evans quite a bit in the last couple of videos I did. I take a risk on Alvin Kamara at the 2-12. Right now, it's looking like his suspension could get pushed back all the way to 2023. I'm willing to take that risk. There's also the option that he could get like a 6-game suspension. So at the end of the second round, I'm going to take that risk there because if he doesn't get suspended until 2023, you've absolutely blown that pick out of the water. And then I decided to go with Mark Andrews at the 3-1. There wasn't a running back sitting there that I was like, okay, I definitely want to get this guy. If Mike Evans had been there, I would have gone with a Mike Evans instead. If Barkley would have fallen, I would have gone with like a Barkley instead. So for me to take Mark Andrews there, just ended up working out because there wasn't a whole lot more for me. Skipping to the end of the fourth round now, as you can see the draft playing out here very well. Running backs really coming off the board. So, if you're one to say, hey, I want to skip on those running backs, as you can see here, you start getting to the middle of the fourth round, it starts to get to be slim pickings a little bit. So Pittman, I was hoping would fall to me. Pittman was definitely a guy that I was going to have in my queue ready to go. I was going to roll with him as my first wide receiver off the board. That doesn't end up happening. So here at the turn, I definitely want to, get my first wide receiver because I want to get a guy that I believe could be a wide receiver 1, and that's going to be DJ Moore for me. Definitely love DJ Moore here. He's a tremendous value at the end of the 4th, beginning of the 5th. He's going to provide some wide receiver 1 weeks, probably will be a high to mid wide receiver 2 most weeks. So just get a little upside with your other wide receivers if you do go with a guy like him. Miles Sanders is my RB3. Absolutely love it. I don't hate Miles Sanders as an RB3. I don't like him as an RB1 or an RB2, though, if that makes sense to you. I definitely think he'll get the lion's share of the touches there. He is going to lose out on some touches that will be valuable in a fantasy sense, but he's still going to get more than enough that as your RB3, you're going to be able to plug him in there weekly and feel decent about it. So taking him there as my RB3, especially if there's no Kamara, again, I would hate to have him as my RB2, but a little bit of a backup insurance there, knowing that Kamara could still have a suspension this year. I knew I needed to get another wide receiver or another running back there that would be considered the running back 1 on his team. That's why I decided to go with Miles Sanders there. And again, grabbing DJ Moore, I like that pick of DJ Moore. Just make sure that later on in your draft, as you get to some of those other wide receivers, you try to get a little upside with those wide receivers to kind of help offset the ceiling that DJ Moore could be capped at with Baker Mayfield being his quarterback. Now we're going to jump all the way coming into the end of the 6th round here. A couple of running backs come off the board during that run there with Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, another tight end in Dalton Schultz. We see some wide receiver runs happening here. Allen Robinson going at the 6'8 to Brizzleton. Nice pick there. Love that. I was definitely going to be taking him as my wide receiver too, so that didn't end up working out. I've got my queue absolutely loaded there on the right-hand side as well. Here coming into it, I'm thinking, all right, what do I want to do? Well, I want to get another wide receiver because I need my wide receiver too. And I definitely think that I need to grab another running back here, knowing that by the time it gets back to me in the 8th round, I'm not going to have somebody that I can rely on as my RB4. Now, this is a 2-flex league, so grabbing an RB4 is very important. So you can make sure that you do put a running back in the flex as much as possible. And here I want to grab somebody with a little bit of upside and somebody that I think is going to have the potential to go even higher. So For the wide receiver, I go with Rashad Bateman over like Juju. Definitely had Amari Cooper on the board there. Like I mentioned, Allen Robinson as well. Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver 1 in Baltimore. If he can put up numbers that are even close to what Marquise Brown has done there, then taking him at the end of the 6th round as your wide receiver 2 would be amazing value. Amazing value. And then I grabbed Tony Pollard. We've said it a ton on this channel this year. Tony Pollard is a guy that has standalone value. He's not just a guy that you're going to grab to really offset. If you draft Zeke Elliott, he's not going to be a guy that you just handcuff Zeke with. He's a guy that you can draft and you can get him is that standalone value. He's going to get work in the passing game, especially knowing that there could be some guys, like a Michael Gallup who isn't ready to go at the beginning of the season. Missing some other guys who have moved on from the team, like a Cedric Wilson. Tony Pollard is going to have a nice amount of standalone value this year. And I decided to go with him over a Melvin Gordon, James Cook, Sony Michel, Haskins, all those guys. Definitely a little too early for them. And the reason I went with him over Gordon and Cook is just because I believe Pollard has a little bit more upside. And again, I think if Melvin Gordon, if Javonte Williams goes down, yeah, Melvin Gordon is an absolute hammer RB1. James Cook is really, I don't know if he's going to take over as the guy yet this year. So it was between Pollard and Melvin Gordon, but I decided to go with a little bit more of a dynamic playmaker. Heading into the end of the 8th round now, the 8-9 turn for me. This is definitely an area that I'm taking a look at as my quarterback 1. Where can I get my quarterback 1 at this point? And then also, this is a 3 wide receiver league. And as I said earlier, I got DJ Moore. So I want to try and offset DJ Moore and his ceiling that is going to be a little bit on the lower end with a guy that I believe could end up being very high. I end up going with DeAndre Hopkins here. Grab him here at the 8th round. He's going to be serving a 6-game suspension to begin the year. But as soon as he comes back, then he becomes my wide receiver 1. DJ Moore moves to my wide receiver 2. Rashad Bateman moves to my wide receiver 3. That is tremendous upside there. That is exactly what you want to grab. I took a look at quarterbacks and I said to myself, okay, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, all these guys are still here that I feel okay with. So instead, again, I wanted a little bit of upside at the wide receiver position, knowing that I'm not going to have DeAndre Hopkins and that DJ Moore is going to have a lower ceiling. I go with Chris Olave. Definitely love his ceiling this year. If I put him in as my wide receiver 3 to begin the season, I definitely think he could have some big games, especially in some opportunities where, it's going to be a little bit of a shootout. He potentially has that cornerback 2 coverage instead of cornerback 1 coverage. So grabbing Chris Olave and DeAndre Hopkins there, I think really helps shape my wide receiver room. Now, we're going to pick this up here, kind of the beginning of the 10th round, and I wanted to make a note here on Marlon Mack and Sony Michel. Now, Prince Hunter, again, I'm sure that he's been watching the videos and hearing me talking up Marlon Mack and Sony Michel and how these guys are great late-round values. So I'm not surprised that they came off the board, but I am surprised they came off the board at the 9-10 round. That's way too early. That is way too early. Both of those guys are solid double-digit round picks. So for Marlon Mack and Sony Michel to come off that early, it did end up messing with me a little bit because my thought is that I could grab Sony Michel probably at the 10-11 mark, and then I could grab Marlon Mack around later at the 12-13 mark. That didn't end up happening. That's a little too early for me. And again, that kind of goes back to the point that I made earlier in the draft where, yes, you're not going to follow ADP to a T, but it is good to know where it sits because when you know where it sits, you can try to get a little bit better value on players. Marlon Mack and Sony Michel are fine pickups. Marlon Mack and Sony Michel at the 9-10 round is not a good pickup. It is one that is going to cost you some value because in that area, you've got Elijah Mitchell, you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I forget who he went with in the 3rd round, but I know he took a running back in the 3rd round as well. You've got, try to grab yourself some potential upside there. Try to grab yourself, a tight end there that could end up helping you out. If you look at it and there's literally nobody else that you trust, then at that point, okay, yes, if there's nobody else that you like there, then you might as well go with them. Just know that 9-10 round there for Marlon Mack, Sony Michel, probably a little bit too early for me, but it also depends on what he had his draft board sitting at. If he had them locked in and he was like, these are my guys, sometimes you just got to go get your guys and screw the ADP. Jalen Hurts and Tom Brady going here in the 10th round. Tom Brady was definitely on my radar coming back to me, but that's all right because I go with Russell Wilson, who is also going to provide very similar numbers this year. Definitely wanted to grab some Russell Wilson. Just took a quick peek up at the board as well. Going to the wide receiver position, kind of taking a quick look through the wide receiver position, seeing what I have there. I decided to go with Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker, absolute shot at being the wide receiver 1 in New England this year. Nothing against Jacoby Myers or the other guys. Devontae Parker definitely has the potential. He has the potential. He's going to have to get that kind of rapport with Mac Jones early on in training camp. But I definitely think the opportunity is there for Devontae Parker to be the guy this year. Taking him in the 11th round, getting a guy in the 11th round that could be the wide receiver 1 for his team is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity. That's not something that you want to pass up too much. And again, knowing that when I take a look at my team, that definitely until I get to week 7 when DeAndre Hopkins can come back, at that point, I'm going to be missing a little bit of upside with that room. So wanting to grab that upside as much as possible later in this draft to make sure that I am set and ready to go. And also, taking Devontae Parker because, again, Sony Michel was going to be my pick there. Sony Michel was gone, so there was nothing I could do. Coming here to the 12-13 round, I'm going to go with Mark Ingram. That's a little too early for me. Mark Ingram going to be undrafted in most leagues. But knowing that, again, Kamara suspension could potentially happen, I need to make sure that I grab my handcuff. I recommend all of you do that as well. For those of you that do spend a draft pick on Alvin Kamara, make sure you grab Mark Ingram. But that is a fluid situation there in New Orleans too. It might not be Mark Ingram. So if you draft him, you have to keep an eye on the news there to see who could end up coming out as being that RB1 if a suspension goes down. And then again, my plan was to take where I took Devontae Parker was to take Sony Michel, and where I took Mark Ingram or Hassan Haskins was to take Marlon Mack. That didn't work out. So I did end up going with Haskins here. I think it's very important to also try and own the RB2 in Tennessee this year, knowing that there is always a possibility that Derrick Henry, could break down. Now, I don't think he's going to break down personally, but we know he's had a lot of carries. If you're out there if you're somebody out there that subscribes to the fact that Derrick Henry could go down and miss some time, or they're going to try to lighten his workload a little bit, Haskins is like Derrick Henry. He's not Derrick Henry. Okay. Don't get me wrong. He's not there. He's like Derrick Henry in terms of his running style and the way he would fit into that offense. So definitely wanting to try and grab him in all my drafts this year. My pick here at the 14-15, Evan McPherson was going to be my guy. So I got sniped on Evan McPherson. Definitely a guy that such good accuracy. I want to try and own him. But I decided to go with Hopkins from the Chargers. We know he's going to get a ton of opportunities this year. We know he's going to score a ton of points in that offense. So I go with him. Also, kicking on the inside, for a majority of time, or semi-inside with that stadium there in LA, definitely is going to help him out a little bit. And then as far as defenses go, really at this point for me, it's kind of, what defense do I think has the best upside? Going to go with Baltimore there. Hopefully they're a little bit more healthy this year than what they were last year. Definitely tried to retool that defense a little bit in the offseason. Looks good. Definitely think it could end up helping everybody out. So, in terms of talking about my team, in this last round here, we're going to talk in a minute too about some of the picks you see come up in the last round and what that means. But as far as, my team goes, started with Jonathan Taylor at the 1, at the 2-3 turn, ended up going with Kamara and Mark Andrews. I think that's a solid start right there. You take a look at the 4th round with DJ Moore, then Miles Sanders, Rashad Bateman, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Olave, Russell Wilson, Devontae Parker at the 11, Mark Ingram, Hassan Haskins, Hopkins, and then Baltimore. The one thing about my team is that all the potential is there. All the potential is there. Because if for some reason Kamara does not get suspended until 2023, you've now got yourself a potential top 5, 2 top 7 running backs. So absolutely smash that out of the park right there. As soon as DeAndre Hopkins comes back, I got a wide receiver 1, all the way in the 8th round, which a lot of drafts I've seen DeAndre Hopkins kind of going towards the end of the 6th, early 7th. So he lasted a little bit later than what I would have suspected. But again, keep an eye on him in that 6-7 turn, depending on if you're there. So my team, when DeAndre Hopkins comes back, and if Alvin Kamara does not get suspended, I don't know how you compete with this team on a weekly basis. I don't know how. This team should win the league. You've got one wide receiver 1. You got a high wide receiver 2. You've got Bateman, who's got the potential to be a mid wide receiver 2 at worst. You've got Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara, who both could be top 7 running backs. You've got Russell Wilson, who could put up top 7 at least numbers at the quarterback position. I mean, and Mark Andrews, who could be the tight end 1, tight end 2. So, I mean, you really, with this team configured here, if Kamara gets suspended, yes, you have to be a little bit worried about the depth then at that point, because you have to put Miles Sanders as your RB2. But the depth is really good on this team as well if you don't get a suspension with Kamara. In this last round, TJ Schumann goes with Zach Wilson because I believe they both like chasing after their mom's friends. So I think that's why he ended up going with them. TJ, settle down, big boy. Rob Gronkowski goes to Peasy in the 15th. A lot of people were talking about this in Discord, but hey, this is why I say if you're drafting this early in the offseason like we are right now, a lot of times I'll skip on a kicker and skip on defense to take guys that could do something. Like Rob Gronkowski, he said he isn't coming back, but we don't know that for sure. We don't know that. Gronk and Tom Brady could hang out tomorrow and they could end up, being like, okay, you know what? Let's get it back together. So, this is the draft. This is what we've got here. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. I think the draft went really well. I really think that this is a team that could win it all this season. But let me know down in the comments below. Do you think this is a team that could win it all this season? Let me know, because I do. I think this is an A. I think this is an absolute smash of a draft. If you can get these guys, I think you're going to be looking at definitely running the table on your league this year. So let me know down in the comments below. Hit that like button for me. And if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, you got to subscribe and stick around. I appreciate everybody tuning in to this video. Make sure you continue to check out all of our awesome content all off season long. But for now, I'm going to leave you all to it. Stay safe. Stay healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. Y'all stuck on 3rd down. Your content's plain Jane. Headliners on top now. We gonna move and change. Podcast off the rip. Draft guide, so legit. Fantasy world, our game tight. You know we about that chub life. Stuck in a rut, and you need some motivation. Head to the channel for this Headliner Nation. I'm a headliner.